Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby, and one of the original and least changed maps, Murovanka, has been absolutely reworked in patch 9.3. This video is going to let you know everything that you need to know about the changes that are happening to Murovanka, my thoughts on how it's going to change the gameplay, and maybe some key locations that you should be able to look out for. So here I've got the old 9.2 Murovanka, and here I've got the new 9.3 Murovanka. Now, one of the key things that needs mentioning is that while previously Murovanka was 800 meters by 800 meters, now it is 1000 by 1000 meters. As we can see, if we go between them, there's this whole new area on the outside of the map, which we can now use, basically 100 meters either side of it. But let's talk firstly about the key features of Murovanka in 9.2. In recent months, the meta on Murovanka has been, in my opinion, very unfair. People who spawned at the north had a free run to be able to get up into the hills that were located around here. Then they would be able to have opportunistic fire down on these guys and anyone who wanted to make their way along this ridgeline, let alone any of the heavies that like to trundle up along here. These locations were completely hulled down, and you're above your opponents. It's a huge advantage, and you could not compete if you spawned in the southern area and went this way, unless you would simply outmaneuver the enemies. Also, locating yourself in this position meant that enemies that would locate around here and also into the forest would have clean shots into your side if you wanted to turn to face these targets and engage them. This led to Murovanka being probably one of the most unfair maps in the rotation in 9.2. This building should be familiar for you in that corner of the map. As we can see, the hill has been completely flattened, and as the map has been made bigger, there is a huge amount more area that you can work within. Now don't fear, there are still dips that you can use to get advantages, getting hull down hopefully and only exposing your turret armor, but you're simply not going to be high up on the enemies, shooting down upon them. Also, we can see there has been a town that has been added in the west, so that will allow the people who spawn to the south to be able to make their way up and hopefully have some cover to hide behind as they want to push the engagement. But it's going to work both ways. This is sort of a central position in the map, as we can see now. The symmetry goes right down the middle, and both teams are going to make their way towards here, fighting over these undulations to the buildings, where we're probably going to see heavies using those buildings to avoid the artillery and progress the fight towards the enemy base. Next, we had a key defensive location for the team that spawned in the south to use. This building around here with these woods was a very big camping location for the team. We can see that while this building remains, and also the bushes and the trees behind that building remain, there is this whole extra 100 meters or so over here that you can use to outflank your opponents. Also, as we mentioned, because of the buildings along here, you're going to be able to get closer to the people who like to stay behind the building and hopefully light them up, maybe for your team who could be further away, or at least be able to see what's shooting at you, rather than the magical mystical tank destroyers that often like to engage people when they reach this location. Once you've made it to the south, there is a whole new area surrounding the outside of the map, which you can use to progress towards the enemy base. Must be noted as well that the cap circle has been moved. While previously it was located over here, near the ridge line that was here, it has been moved to a more central location, which means that the enemies that like to, previously liked to camp over here in this area where the hill has been removed, but I digress, we'll get onto that later, are not going to have as easy shots from long range into the cap circle anymore. So what we found is that while previously the cap circle was here, just outside the forest, it has been moved to a more central location. And equally, the cap circle that was here has been moved to a more central location on the southern side of the map. What has basically happened is, whereas Murovanka was kind of a symmetry along here, at least with regards to the base locations and the way of the nature of the fight, what was found is that while originally, maybe a year or two ago, all the fighting would devolve to around these buildings, once this northern team realized they could make use of this location up here, it changed the fight so that the team that spawned at the south would get stuck around here and around here. Now that the symmetry has been changed from a diagonal to straight across the horizontal of the map, I think this should make it much more fair indeed and more enjoyable for all. So let's talk about one of the next biggest locations, camping in the southeast. There was a big hill there, and there were also a load of bushes and trees that you could shoot out of, which discouraged anyone from really advancing through the forest. That hill is no more, as we can clearly see here, and also there's this whole extra area to the southeast that you can use. This should mean that coming out of the forest, which has also been changed, will be a lot easier and allow you to progress around the outer ring of the map and hopefully outflank your opponents, having less choke points. Next, we should highlight that in 9.2, that there would be all manner of opponents finding positions in this forest. The engagement usually occurred with one team camping along here and behind this building, and with the other team usually camping around these locations, and then brave people would try and rush through to make it down into here to spot. In 9.3, the forest has been completely changed. I'd say that it's been thinned out, but the most important thing is that there are now roads through it which are lower lying than the rest of the terrain, which should allow you to evade being spotted, or at least have some cover to fall back behind if you are spotted. It's no longer going to be the case of you wait until you get spotted through the magical mystical forest, and then the opponents that would like to camp in the southeast will just almost one-shot you, especially in the higher tier games, or even in the lower tier games. There would usually be so many people in there that you would instantly die if you got spotted. Now when you enter the forest, you're going to be ducking and weaving over these undulations, progressing through the fight, trying to outflank your opponents, using the ridge lines to hopefully go hull down on your mission to try and outflank and outplay your opponents. If you make it to the building over here, you can drop down into a dip on the other side, which should hopefully provide you some cover to allow you to progress around to the location we just described. There is also a central location in Murovanka, and as we can see, there are buildings being added here and here in 9.3 that weren't there in 9.2. Let's take a look to see how they will impact the gameplay. Now you can get really close to the enemy cap circle while having buildings in the way. Previously, this whole area around here was a bit of a death run, and people would like to remain up on these ridge lines, hold them, and force the enemies into the open ground to engage them. Now you should have some cover to hide behind these buildings as you decide to progress along this part of the map if you should choose so. What we're really finding is that Wargaming are opening up this map to be a lot less linear. There are going to be more opportunities for you to attack down more flanks, with having less kind of kill zones where you're probably going to get absolutely destroyed if you get spotted. If you do get spotted, a quick bit of evasive maneuvering and you're probably going to be able to find some cover. All in all, Murovanka is a completely new map. It's going to be familiar to you because you've probably played hundreds and hundreds of games on it, and it does have that nostalgic feeling. However, the way that the gameplay is going to pan out is going to be completely different in 9.3 as to what it was in 9.2. I think that Wargaming are trying to make all of their maps more progressive. They've obviously added symmetry back into Murovanka to make it more fair. Previously it was an unsymmetrical map, for which I felt, and remember this is just my opinion, that the northern team would have the advantage if they utilized the ridge lines on that hill that was there in the northwest. I'm really excited for the rebalancing of Murovanka, and overall I think these are some really good changes. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It'll really help the channel out and I'll appreciate it. And let me know in the comments what you think about the changes to Murovanka. Do you think it's sad to see one of the original maps now having such drastic changes applied to it? Or do you think that it's one of the maps that needed reworking? As always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.